Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to everybody that has joined the webinar. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We're here to talk about how Trustmark Bank streamlined Treasury processes using DocuSign CLM. So before we get started, a quick note of forward-looking statements. So if you are going to make any purchasing decisions, please note that we might make some forward-looking statements today. So please make your purchasing decisions based on what's available in the marketplace today. My name is Nisha Patton. I'm the Director of Marketing for Financial Services and Insurance here at DocuSign, and I am thrilled to be joined today by some great speakers. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Tom?
Sure, thanks, Nisha. So my name is Tom Munley. I'm a partner at Spaulding Ridge, responsible for our advisory practice, and had the opportunity to work with one of our great clients in Trustmark, and Josh Laird. So Josh, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right, thanks, Tom. So I'm Josh Laird. I am Vice President of Retail Administration at Trustmark and responsible for many of the operations and systems that we use within the retail bank here.
Great. Thank you both. And both Tom and Josh have a lively Q&A and a lot to talk about. But before we get there, I just wanted to talk about all the change that we have seen in just the last year. The world as we know it, the way business gets done has drastically changed. Recently, with the SBA PPP loans, the need for speed has been underlined and stressed on tremendously. In addition, the digital adoption and the speed with which customers as well as employees with remote work want to proceed with business. It's just the new normal now, and remote work is not going to go away, and the expectations that customers have with digital is here to stay as well. And all of this is introducing the need for added security and privacy. So knowing all of this, the priorities for most banks have changed. So it's digital is not new, but the need to bring in great customer experience and ensure that the customer interaction over digital channels remains secure has been underlined. In addition, remote work is going to be the new normal. We're all going to experience it. And it is up to the banks now to balance this, to give the right tools in the hands of their sales teams, their loan officers, so they're able to continue to be productive through a remote environment as well. And in all of this, earning and building on customer trust is always going to be at the heart of everything that banks do. Most of you know DocuSign as the e-signature provider, and we are definitely a leader in that space. But the way we think about agreements and everything that we talked about, from customers wanting digital experiences to employees to security, we think of this agreement lifecycle that your customer is going to go through with you. So while e-signature is a piece of the puzzle, it is definitely the agreement cloud or the agreement process that is the larger part of this. So we think of agreements as preparing, signing, acting, as well as managing the entire life cycle of all of the agreements that are involved. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom to talk a little bit about Spaulding and what they do.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nisha. So as Nisha mentioned, as I mentioned previously, I'm a partner with Spaulding Ridge, and Spaulding Ridge is actually DocuSign's #1 partner. And we've really taken a specific focus on implementing best-in-cloud solutions, which obviously includes DocuSign. And our approach to doing so is to drive efficiency and reducing cost and complexity. And so when we take a look at the numbers, there's a couple numbers I wanted to highlight here. First is the 70+ agreement cloud specialists that we have. And those agreement cloud specialists, help both our clients do the digital transformation, which Nisha had talked about previously, then also get very tactical in terms of, executing on e-signature. And that's something that we've continued to see a growth in. And one of the things that you'll see with us is that with the 150+ DocuSign clients, we do we provide a range of different services. And so if we can go to the next slide, one of the things that I think we do a nice job of is, offering our clients the whole range. So starting with the strategy and the roadmap, which oftentimes begins with a conversation on what are you trying to do? And when we think through what Nisha had mentioned before about digital transformation and customers needing to transform the way that they're working with, their end customers, that starts with that strategy roadmap in terms of discussing, what is possible. And DocuSign is a core to that. But beyond the strategy and the roadmap, we also help clients actually do the implementation, which is something that we're going to talk about in our experience with Josh and Trustmark this afternoon. But then we take it a step further. We'll help clients on the, after they go live, with managed services and support. We'll help them work through the advanced analytics. We'll help them with the change management, whether that's training, adoption, the establishment of a center of excellence, or whether it's connecting DocuSign, be it CLM or e-signature or insights, to any of the other applications which they may have, right? Because DocuSign can be used in a standalone capacity, or it can be integrated as a part of either sales or procurement, or frankly, even regulatory uses across the entity. So, we focus on offering a complete end-to-end solution. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about here, and I'm going to let Josh introduce Trustmark, which is one of our favorite clients, is their DocuSign journey and how they took a little part of the business and really began their digital transformation journey leveraging DocuSign. So with that, Josh, do you want to just give us a quick overview of Trustmark Bank?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I'd be happy to. So as I mentioned, I am with Trustmark. We are about 130 years old. We have a good number of branches in the Southeast and cover a great market here. And we started in the DocuSign journey, as many did, with just e-signature, but that didn't really touch our Treasury services arm of our business, and that's one of the areas that I've been responsible for managing a piece of here at Trustmark. And so we were very interested in being able to help us manage those processes so that we could help our customers. So our Treasury customers are those that contract with us for services to help them manage and move their money. And that could be something, like a small landscaping business that wants to set up a direct deposit for their employees' payroll, or it could be a large corporation or even a state entity that needs to manage their money and move their money. So, banks in general have been very keen and built around personalized relationships, and that still is very important to us. But there's always been kind of this aversion to doing things remotely. But we knew that there had to be a good way for us to deliver a digital experience that not only helped our customers, but that was one that improved the experience for our employees as well. And so we took on that task here within our Treasury Services group, and we had some very complex processes that we really needed some help in managing in a digital environment.
Yeah, and Josh, I think as you were talking about that, I mean, obviously, there's the personal relationship, which I think is key, but ultimately, when you think about how to make that relationship even better, there are certain challenges that you're trying to work through, right? And so why don't we talk a little bit about some of the challenges you guys had with kind of the historical or the legacy approach that your treasury management services were using to get clients, frankly, signed up and doing more business with the bank?
Sure. Yeah. So it was complex, and as you might imagine, it was very much paper-based. So let me just say, as for an example, if a customer wanted to sign up for direct deposit payroll services, that they would talk with their relationship manager, and they would help them to identify the right services that they needed. It would include many other forms or many forms that would go along with the implementation of that service and our agreements and such. Those could be, emailed, mailed, faxed, couriered back and forth by some of our relationship managers to the business for signature and execution. And many of those, depending upon the business, may need to actually have gone to, or still may need to go to, a board of directors for sign off and approval, depending on their business structure. So once those documents are signed by the customer, the physical forms were returned back to us at the bank, and those were routed to the individual teams here within our support environment that were responsible for implementing those services. So it was complex, it was paper-based, it was slow and time-consuming and just horribly inefficient.
And Josh, to that point, I mean, the process you described, obviously you got a number of different pieces of paper coming back into the bank. I mean, was it ever a challenge to let a customer know where they were at in the process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So there was no visibility, I would say, for our sales reps to be able to, to pull up an agreement or to pull up a customer in any type of system and see where we were in the implementations of the services that they had requested. So, that added a layer of complexity onto things that, we have since been able to address.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think the other thing that obviously when you don't have an easy way to measure it, sometimes you don't have an easy way to accelerate it, right? So, as we think about the importance of speed and speed being critical to the business, one of the things that I know that we previously talked about was kind of the overall process and the complexity of the process, because what I don't want to do is give people the perception that this was just hey, we showed up on a Tuesday afternoon, knocked it out, and went and got Starbucks. So, as we think about the process, what was your expectation as we began the project and started walking through what you see here, which is a high level screenshot of the overall process, in terms of the complexity that we were going to have to deal with across all of the different cash management enrollment forms.
Yeah, so there may have been a lot of coffee involved, but it wasn't just a one-time meeting, that's for sure. So, so as you mentioned, Tom, it was a kind of a complex use case, and one of the things that we really wanted to do was to make this as easy to use for our sales reps and our support reps and any others that are a part of the implementation and support process for onboarding these customers and these services. And that was one thing that we were able to work with your team at Spaulding Ridge to really map this process out, define what it needed to be, and to leverage efficiencies where we could within the system to allow it to handle tasks for us when it could, as opposed to a person having to do those things. So we really were able to narrow the focus, I'll say, to improve the experience and take something that, probably had, 20, 30 plus different work streams and build that into one really that is handling everything from the creation of that agreement to the final implementation and training of those products and services that our customers have signed up for.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because I think the second bullet on the left there, in terms of the reduction in complexity, right? I mean, that improves the end user experience, right? Not only for your bank representatives that are working with your end customers, right, but also for the end customer itself. And I know we'll talk a little bit about that later. But the second point, and the thing I wanted to highlight, especially with the process map still up, is just, and you touched on this earlier, which is the visibility into the sales process, right? I mean, each rectangle on the process flow, basically, as that document progresses through the various steps, right? It's recording what step it's at, and it's giving you visibility, step by step into the pretty lengthy sales and subsequent internal approval process as well, correct?
That's right. Yes. So we are able to have that visibility now. That reduces the number of questions that are posed by our sales team to our support team, and even vice versa in some cases. So we're able to see that and track it and report on it. And like you said earlier, to have visibility so we understand where there are issues and where there are still opportunities for improvement.
Right. And I think, well, as we'll talk about, hopefully that all translates into a higher level of customer service for the bank's customers. So.
Yes, absolutely. It certainly does.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, ultimately it comes down to, I think, and we've touched on this a couple of times, is speed, right? And speed being, critical, to the business. So, do you want to talk just a little bit about what the experience has been like for your customers and employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So, something of this magnitude and as a transformation within the organization, it could have gone one of two ways. And our partnership with DocuSign and the Spaulding Ridge team really made it a successful endeavor for us here, and has created an excellent experience, both for our customers who have had, raving feedback about the the option now to electronically sign these agreements and to be able to receive those and execute them through the DocuSign channel, but also our employees that now have that visibility into the process, have a queue of tasks for them to work for implementations and trainings and other calls and activities that go along with the overall workflow. And one of the things that as we were looking for a solution, and I'll stop here and say that we actually had gone down a path with what I'll say is an industry-specific solution for Treasury management onboarding, and it just didn't pan out for us. It wasn't what we needed, and so we were really looking for something that could deliver on the promises that were made, but that we were able to trust, and that was something that was important for us in identifying. And certainly our relationship that was already in existence with DocuSign was perfect for us to build upon, and the DocuSign brand is one that exudes, I think, trust in the marketplace. And so that was one thing that was very important to us here. And the other things that we really wanted it to be, like I said, easy to use, quick, that speed that we keep talking about. And then, of course, we wanted to have the option for electronic signature. But a lot of what you don't see as a customer are these workflows that we have built into the system on the back side of things. And that previous slide that showed that process map, that's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes and really allows us to transact on agreements in a quicker fashion. So as a customer has signed an agreement and that comes back in and is routed through the workflow appropriately and managed by that workflow, we're able to kind of break the different products off. If that customer has contracted for more than one product, we create simultaneous threads or workflow streams within that application that allows us to begin work on one while maybe another product is at a different step requiring or waiting on an approval to be made for something to proceed. So we've gained some efficiencies in our implementation timelines and just the way that the system overall manages those tasks for us. And then one last key thing that we really needed to have was to leverage a data source that is a non-CRM data source. So, a little bit of a proprietary, I guess, environment that we were drawing data from, and the flexibility of the DocuSign CLM system allowed us to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in terms of just, having an unconventional environment that DocuSign was able to integrate with, and frankly, I think, leverage a lower cost technology solution on the back end than maybe some traditional solutions would be. But just to go back for a second, so the second to last bullet point, and I touched on this on the previous slide, managing those internal workflows and approvals. I think, for people who don't work at a bank, one of the things that they may not realize is just, how thorough, a bank is in terms of making sure that literally every I is dotted and T is crossed, as you work through setting up, new services for a customer. I mean, if you had to characterize, what it was like prior to implementing DocuSign versus what it's like now, and having kind of that digital enablement, if you will, through the whole process, how would you compare those two?
Oh gosh, I don't know that it's even fair to compare, Tom. So the way that we operated before the use of DocuSign CLM was kind of along those same lines. It was a very paper-based and time-consuming process for us to obtain some of the approvals for certain products that we offer that require those, and that required us in many cases, like walking to the office of, let's say, a credit officer that needed to sign off on something for us, and having them sit down and sign it, to now where we are able to utilize forms that we have built into the CLM system and the e-signature piece of DocuSign to allow that to be 100% electronic. Our credit officers, for example, they love it. They're asking for for more as it relates to that. And so it's just a night and day comparison, I guess, and it really has allowed us to speed up again the implementation of these services. So whereas we'll talk about here in a minute where it was taking a long time to do this process from end to end, we've been able to narrow down and chip away at the time that it took to implement these things for our customers, which is a win not only for the bank but certainly for our customers.
Yeah, and I think a great point as we to talk about some of the value that was delivered is the fact that you guys actually started this process prior to the pandemic, right? I mean, this was not something that you guys said, oh gosh, how do we do this? In COVID times, you guys were ahead of the curve, and you went live, really 2 months before the pandemic hit, right? So in terms of timing, couldn't have really worked out better, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah, we could not have asked for better timing in this, and that certainly was one thing that I think helped keep us going strong here during the pandemic over the last year.
That's great. So as we transition and talk just a little bit about the value, right? Because I think one of the things that people always wonder is, okay, I hear you on the technology side. I can conceptualize how a process gets automated, but where's the value really getting driven? And do you want to kind of walk us through kind of some of the key points here that I know we've kind of touched around, but really focus on how it's made a difference for Trustmark?
Yeah, sure. So like I mentioned, that process starts with our relationship managers. They're gathering data, and that data gathering, as far as the data elements that need to make their way into a document, happens so much quicker now. We have that form that they're able to complete within DocuSign CLM that sets up the document, and it makes it a relevant document for the customer. So kind of skipping around on this slide here a little bit, but the last bullet point here, it talks about how we are able to, essentially consolidate or expose different parts of the form so that it makes it very relevant for the customer, and that they're only seeing, the services on that agreement that they're signing up for. If they sign up for 20 different services and all of those are on this one document, if they're signing up for one, it's just showing that one. So that was something that, with our forms that we had kind of already built, that was certainly something that we saw value in the CLM system being able to help us to manage. But so once those documents are signed, that signature process is part of an automated workflow that we've talked about. And so that really helps us keep on track in being able to have these services set up and implemented with our customers as quickly as possible, which is very important. If we're talking about a business being able to manage and move their money, if we shave 2 or 3 days off for the time that it takes us to implement a service, that can make a meaningful difference to a business cash flow. So while it may not seem like a lot in a 2 or 3 day time reduction, that does mean a lot for many of our business customers that are using these services, like I said, to manage their cash. I touched earlier on the parallel processing. So, we're able to move forward with the implementation of certain products while we're maybe still waiting on information or approvals for other products that were a part of that agreement that was signed up front. So, and then one key point that we are able to leverage is just, collecting information. And in this case, in this example, being able to collect information that we use for billing. So we're able to take data elements off of the agreement and the workflow and the process and other things that happen within that, and report on that and use that for our billing purposes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Josh, because I think one of the things that people, both commercial customers and I'm sure retail customers at banks sometimes get frustrated with is every form I have to fill out, all of the same information, and if you're signing up for multiple products, as is the case with your cash management solutions, you're going to have to, you would previously have had to fill that information out, several times, right? Thus not only taking longer, but also potentially frustrating the customer as they're walking through those forms with you.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, that's great. I think one of the things that when we look back on this project and we think about some of the keys to success, we flashed the process diagram up earlier, but taking that process first approach, is certainly something that I think we felt was critical for us, and it allowed us to do some of the things that you just highlighted, right? Especially around running in parallel, right? Because I think one of the things that was discussed about and we went back and forth on as we worked through that design was, okay, what can we continue to move forward, right? With the idea of, okay, if I start in step one, which is name, address, and taxpayer ID. Okay, how do I make sure that if I'm signing up for 4 out of the 27 different products, that I'm not held up on an approval for one, which may require several levels of approval at the bank, while the other 3 could potentially go forward, right?
That's right, absolutely.
And then I think the second part of that is, taking the custom approach to say, okay, look, you know what, you guys didn't have a conventional CRM system like a lot of our CLM clients do, which we typically integrate directly with. So, coming up with an approach where we could leverage, a flat file to really facilitate that integration and do the reporting off of that. And I think that's one of the things that when you think about the capabilities of DocuSign, the ability to analyze and report and measure things that are at different steps in the process. I like to say it's sort of reporting on steroids if you think if you compare it to, say, a conventional CRM like a Salesforce, where I can report on opportunities in the pipeline. Now I'm actually getting very detailed reports, and I can measure it down to, okay, well, this is who's approved it, this is where the next step is, and this is this is how long it's taken at that particular step in the process. So I think getting that detail is incredibly important. And I think the last thing, as we think about the conversations that we initially had, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on it, is, building those workflows to not only include the internal bank employees, right? Because one of the things we recognized is that some of these process flows would start with an internal bank employee needing to take a step, but then actually routing it out to the customer, for signature, and then routing that document then back into the bank for further approvals, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, that was something that has really helped us in seeing some of those gains in efficiency, I guess, and having that one workflow that's handling all of this. And so we're not trying to, take something from, workflow A and move it to workflow B. All of that is handled within this one process design. And, so the flexibility of the DocuSign CLM system, the work that you and your team brought in helping us to map that out at the very beginning, I think was all critical in us seeing some success here. And to that point, I will say that, we felt very good about the team that you brought, Tom, to Trustmark here to help us with this from Spaulding Ridge. And while you and your team are not bankers, y'all understood and quickly caught on to, some of the challenges and pain points that we were having, and helped us to map those out, think about those, and solve for some of those issues. So, I do want to say thank you very much for the work of you and your team in helping us to be able to work through that together.
Oh, we certainly appreciate that, because I think one of the things that we enjoy doing, and banking is certainly an industry that we've seen a growth in, financial services in general, right? With DocuSign, because there's I think a lot of processes and workflows that financial services clients have continued to see an opportunity to leverage. Maybe not a complete digital transformation, but certainly a pocket of digital transformation, which is how I describe what you guys went through. That's made at least a few bank employees and a lot of customers very happy in the process. So, if we could why don't you spend just a little bit of time talking about the ROI that you guys realized as you've been on the system now for, really a little over a year at this point in time, correct?
Yeah, just a little bit over a year. That's right. So, I kind of touched earlier on, the process before CLM was implemented here at Trustmark was lengthy and time consuming. And I would say in the overwhelming majority of our agreements, it took over a week for those, from the point that it was, that conversation was had with the relationship manager, for that to be papered and then sent to the customer, for them to sign it, and for that to be returned back to us. And that doesn't count the time that it took us then to receive that back in here at the support center, and to be able to implement those products for our customers. So it was very lengthy. After CLM, we see that over half of our agreements are signed the very same day that our relationship managers are creating those within the CLM system. So that is amazing. And a good portion of the other half of those are very quickly turned around. Another thing that we see here that is promising is that 97% of the recipients that we are sending these agreements to are completing that envelope, and so we see very high success rates with not only the time but just the adoption of this within our customer experience. And then the workflows I say have really helped us to cut down the time, as I mentioned earlier, that it takes for us to implement these services for our customers. We're seeing a majority of our sales are implemented within 3 to 5 days of the agreement being created within the CLM system. And that's pretty amazing when you think back to that first bullet point where I mentioned earlier that it took over a week in most cases for us just to get the agreement portion done. So the efficiencies that we've had have been tremendous, and you can see here that one of our relationship managers has made a comment that we were sending a lot of paperwork to our customers, and now we're able to do this through CLM. One customer in particular has over 60 accounts, and he is often working with them on updating accounts and adding services, and so it was a complex process that has been simplified now through the CLM journey, I'll say, here at Trustmark. And our customer appreciates it because they're no longer having to internally take that paperwork around and collect signatures and then find a way to get it back to us as quickly as they can so that we can set those services up for them. And so, that's just one example of many that we've heard of over the last year, as you've mentioned, Tom, that, we've seen tremendous success with our customers and their adoptions and, their demands really for this ahead of time were, wanting to transact as quickly as possible. And we were able to find a solution that helped us to be able to do that and makes life easier for not only our sales reps, but also our support and operational folks here that help to manage these, manage the implementations of these services on the back end.
Yeah, and Josh, I think that's one of the takeaways that as we went through some of the requirements and analysis and design is, it's not a static thing. This isn't a one-time interaction, right? So the client highlighted by Johnny here that has 60 plus accounts there. You've got clients that make changes to accounts on a somewhat regular basis. So it's really an investment in a relationship and making that relationship easier for a lot of those customers who have multiple accounts, and ultimately the 20 some odd cash management products or treasury solutions that you guys have, that's going to change, right? Their needs are going to change, right? Businesses grow, they shrink, they expand, they have new suppliers that require different ways to transact, and I think that that is again just again I give you guys credit for having the vision to say, okay, look, how do we make this easier for these clients, especially the ones with a lot of accounts that it would be painful previously for them to work through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as kind of Nisha highlighted at the beginning of our talk here, the whole financial services industry has changed quite a bit over the last year, and to the point that you just made, as far as being able to help our customers change and add and remove the services that they need or no longer need and replace those with others. That's been something that we have seen a lot of over the last year, and something that I'm thankful that we've had CLM to help us to work through.
No, I think that's great. And so, I think I'll just wrap it up by talking about the fact that, you guys aren't alone, right? You guys are one of many financial services institutions that DocuSign and Spaulding Ridge has worked with to implement not only eSign and the core CLM application, but also Insight, which is DocuSign's AI solution, and really help them to make back-based sales plans that maximize the agreement process and accelerate it. And I think Trustmark is a perfect example of that, cutting down from, over a week to the initial agreement, getting that signed 97% within the first day. And then not only that, making it easier on the long-term relationship, with the customer. So when we think about companies like CapTrust, Northmark, and TransUnion, where we're also engaged working with them to implement CLM solutions, which are transforming their business, as I would say, in digital pockets on different aspects, it's going to have a profound impact on their customers and hopefully making people's lives easier and their customer experience just that much happier. So with that, Josh, I just want to say thank you for the time this afternoon. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself at Spaulding Ridge or to sdrsales@docusign.com. Thank you.
All right,
Great.
thank
Thanks
you.
so much, Josh and Tom. This was great. I think our audience must have learned a ton. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, this is the good time to put those into the chat window and we will try to get as many through as possible today. But I want to take a moment to just thank Josh and Tom for an excellent Q&A and for taking time out of their day to do this. Thank you so much. We appreciate it a lot.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha.
All right, and I see two questions that are popping in here, and we have time to cover those. So the first one's for Josh. Josh, in terms of a new technology being introduced, what were some steps that you were able to take to help your teams adopt this quickly and ramp up?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nisha. So, I think that I'll say this first. CLM, in the way that it is built, made it easy for us in this regard. It kind of it bears the load of the workflow, and so being able to have something that is easy for them to access and to see exactly what it is that they need to work on, and they being like I'll say our support team and our operations team. I'm speaking of first, that being able to see those tasks just laid out for them and having the relevant information for them to complete those tasks or to move that along in the workflow was key in being able to really gain that adoption by that group. But it really was easy because of the system itself. I'll say our sales team, they were anxious to have something that helped them more easily create the agreement. So that really was an easy win, and something that I think that most would find that anytime you can make something easier for someone, you're really going to see a good adoption right there, and not a lot of resistance.
Yeah, and that's a testament to the quote from Johnny too, is like you said, when it's easier for someone to do their day-to-day, it becomes that much easier for them to adopt, and they're going to frequently pick it up because it's saving time for them. That's a great point. Another question, and this one's for Tom, around integrations. So the question here is, unlike Trustmark, we are using Salesforce and we have a couple of other systems. What would the integration process look like for us?
Yeah, great question. So I think the great thing about DocuSign is that it's actually an API-led integration architecture. So when you think about integrating with something, well, first off, Salesforce, there's a native integration that works. It's basically point and click, and we love to see those because it can be stood up literally within minutes. But for other applications where you may have, let's say on the procurement side, you want to integrate to an Oracle ERP or an SAP ERP system, again, with the API architecture approach, you can literally plug and play various systems so that workflow can be extended right back into the other systems of the business that you're using to actually reach agreements and transact with. And so I think that's just another advantage for DocuSign in this space.
Great point. And one final question I see here from someone that's curious about AI and something that you had mentioned earlier, Tom, Insight. I'm happy to take that one. And Tom, if you want to jump in, feel free to add. DocuSign's products. So when we talked earlier about the agreement lifecycle and being able to not just prepare agreements quickly and get them signed electronically, but also acting on them and managing them digitally, that's where Insight comes into the picture. So we are using AI tools, machine learning to help get visibility into the contracts that you have and also quickly search them, replacing clauses, or as is with the case that's happening with LIBOR, looking for the right terminology and replacing the rates with the new standard. These are some examples of what Insight is capable of doing, and staying ahead of the game, just like Trustmark has done. And you heard today, I think the next level is going to be definitely AI, and that's the direction we're seeing a lot of our leaders headed in.
Yeah, and I would just add to that one of the things that we saw, especially with the pandemic last year, was an uptick in people needing to find find agreements where there was a force majeure clause, right, where they could quickly say, okay, what was the impact of a pandemic, and are we covered from a terms and conditions standpoint? And I think when you see those major shifts or major events, be it a pandemic, be it a hurricane, or more relevant to financial services, a change from LIBOR as the rate, you're going to be able to go find all the agreements where that is clearly stated and be able to pull them and say, okay, what do we need to start doing in terms of renegotiating? And I think that's one of the things that Insights does for clients, is it accelerates that process, because now I don't have to have somebody in doc review or do a document review and go through hundreds or potentially thousands of documents. You can quickly do that search, and you can do smart searches too that are set up to be automatically run. And I think those types of kind of industry-wide changes that again, financial services has been known for that every so often when new regulations come out and banks and insurers have to react. The ability to quickly pull agreements and do it based on specific terms that Insights can have tagged will make a huge difference in their ability to get the most out of something like a DocuSign Insights program.
Perfect. I think that's about the time we have for Q&A today. Thank you again to Tom and Josh. We really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you to everyone for joining this session. We hope it's been helpful, and as always, look forward to hearing from you.